Hello, everybody. Let me just turn that music down a little bit because we don't want to overbear the conversation that's going to be kind of awesome today. Hang on. I'm getting there. Honestly, I am. There we go. Let's turn that down to about there. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special The Interviews. Normally, we do this show on Sundays at 2 p.m., but today we've had a chance to be able to sit down with the two devs from Puuba, who are responsible for kind of a wacky game called Weaponographist, which we'll get to. But first off, welcome, Danny. Thank you very much. You are the front face for Puuba. I take it.
Yes.
Now,
thanks for having us.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is going to be a blast. And
me and the cartoon guy over that way.
The avatar over at the far end. That's Dave. Now, we'll ask him why in a little bit, but he's kind of shy, and he said, "Can you please just do the avatar for me?" How are you, Dave?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Anyway, before we get into the whole game thing, I like to find out, I guess, who the people are that I'm talking to. Now, first off, Dave, I gotta ask you, what is the I don't want to be on video. Why is that?
It's 2 parts. It's actually 7 parts, but I'm going to condense that and congeal it into 2. Part the first. I don't know. I'm just a little bit shy, and I guess I want to limit my digital footprint, at least in a video capacity, so nobody uses me as a platform for catfishing someone else. And,
because you're the cutest girl in the world.
And more importantly, it's a clever branding opportunity, because look, the entire time you're looking at our gorgeous game art.
Okay, yes, that is. I could have picked just about anything to be your representative on the screen, but I did pick your avatar, which is from the game. Who is that character, by the way?
That character is Bartholomew Bardcakes. He is, in fact, not a bard. He just has the word bard in his name a couple of times. He's more of a, let's call him a journalist. He's a fanboy who follows Doug around and heralds his adventures.
Okay, all right. Now, what? Okay, let's go back a little bit in time. How long have you guys been? I like, you're gamers. Like, obviously, you guys are gamers. You've developed games. You've gone this route. How long have you individually been gaming?
Oh man, I own like every console I think I can name, but beyond that, I literally learned to read on Nintendo Power. My dad, when I was 2 or 3 years old, went out to a CES show and got like one of the first issues of Nintendo Power and taught me to read on it. So I was unable to beat the original Mario Brothers as a young child, and so my dad beat it for me and filmed it on a VHS so I could watch when I got home. Like, I've been playing for literally as long as I can remember. I can't think of a time when I haven't been.
What about you, Dave?
I have been playing games since the very, very early 80s, and I played all the games essentially up until, PS3 era, and then just kind of discovered the indie world through working with Danny, and I don't know, I've been playing games longer than I can remember. It's a huge part of my life and personality, I guess.
When it comes to game, like, obviously you're developing indie games at this point. But when it comes to your favorite games that you play as gamers, what kind of games are your preference? And we'll start with Dave on this one. Like, what is the genre that rocks your socks?
So the genre that changed my personality and arguably ruined my life is MMOs. They are I don't know, that world sucked me so deeply into the process of playing games that I needed to do it for a living or else I'd go crazy. But before that, I'm going to go with Final Fantasy, like all of the Final Fantasy series. That's probably the deepest, most profound and enjoyable video game experience for me.
What about you, Danny?
Well, like Dave, I definitely played like a ton of MMOs, especially in college, but I've had to swear those off entirely. I obsess over deving and playing, so I will play an MMO like it's a full-time job. But I mean, I really like platformers. I'm huge on like Mega Man's, things like that. Really fast, high-speed, precision platformers, and turn-based RPGs. You know, again, Dave said Final Fantasy. I'll crib his answer and say the same. But more and more, I find myself playing like weird indie games that have really interesting, innovative play systems. I'm really obsessed with, like, I'll even play a game for, you know, just an hour, just 10 minutes, just to feel what it does that's new and cool, and like kind of stack a giant backlog faster than I can get through it. But I'm really obsessed with kind of weird and interesting ways of playing.
Okay, what was your very first game that you remember playing?
First of all time, Burger Time? Like, my friend's dad had an Intellivision, and they had Burger Time, and it took me years until I realized I hadn't played Mega Man on that Intellivision. I conflated the two somehow in my brain, but I played a lot of Burger Time at my friend's place. Beyond that, outside of an arcade, probably Mario 1. The first console I owned was an NES, and the first game for it was Mario 1, so that's probably the first game I actually brought home.
What about you, Dave? What was your very, very first game?
My very, very first game was Pitfall Harry on, I guess, the Atari, what was it, 2600?
Sure.
I just remember, like, I was too young to play. Like, I was 2.5 or 3 or something, and my dad was playing it, and I just really wanted... I didn't believe that what he was doing was making the stuff on the screen happen, so I was very incredulous. But I would sit there, I'd watch him play that for hours. It was really exciting for me.
When it comes to game, like, both of you have mentioned, like, consoles. When it comes to your personal gaming time, what is your preference? Are you console players, or are you PC players, or do you like both styles?
Dave?
I'm just going to actually answer about what I see Danny doing, because I feel like it's not going to get said. Danny buys like 50 games a week on, or will download anything free. Like, he grabs everything indie. He's just all over it. So, I would say that Danny's a PC gamer, but he also owns every console and tries to actively play on them, but doesn't. For me, I'm a console mentality, but because I play so many, or just really one MMO so much, I guess you call me a PC gamer.
Yeah. When did the urge to first start creating games hit you guys? And Danny, we'll go with you first.
Sure. Well, we started like Puuba proper about 2 years ago, kind of to the month. We worked together, kind of doing proper grown-up employed type work, and decided to start what I keep calling Operation Big Stupid Gamble and starting our own company. But the first game I ever designed, and I want to know from you too, Dave, because I don't know if we've ever shared this kind of story. The first game I ever designed was called Super Put Together, and I was like 7 or 8 years old with my buddy Matt. And I remember we wrote like pages and pages and pages of like design notes, and it was a total rip-off combination of Mario and Mega Man. It was like you jump on enemies' heads, but every enemy you steal their power, and now you can shoot turtle shells or something. It was total rip-off, to the point where we called the bad guy King Koopa. But to make sure that we never lost our notes, we brought it to my friend Matt, his dad's scanner. He had like, you know, the one of those giant, you shouldn't have it at home yet, scanners.
Yeah.
And we made like 1,000 copies, literally, of every page. We like burned them out of paper, and that worked. We, to this day, they just turn up in drawers, like copies of that design doc. And I think it's because whenever one of us moves, we just take a stack of them and like, I'm not going to lose these, and we put them somewhere.
It's a paper cloud.
It is a paper cloud.
Paper cloud, yes. What about you, Dave? When did the urge to develop or write software like games?
So, like, my story is actually really, really weird, and it's multi-parted. But I'll start at the beginning and skip all the middle and end at the end.
You don't have to. You can go through the whole process. Like, you know, time's
No,
not
we'll be here all
here.
day.
Okay. All right.
When I was a really, really little kid, for some reason, I wanted to be an artist of some kind, and I had no idea what kind. And so I used to draw, and my drawings are terrible. And when I got into video games, when I was maybe 6 or 7, I actually filled these notebooks with, like, I guess you call them game ideas. I don't know what the hell they were. And they all were Metroid, essentially. And the first one I can remember was called Sun Chasers, starring Sid and Pal. And they would go around. They were both basically Samus, and they would go around and shoot stuff and climb platforms, and that's pretty much all they did. But then I became a musician later in life, and I had these 3 other careers. And then I moved from Maryland, where I grew up, to California about 8 years ago. Started my life completely over, and I did so as a game tester at Square Enix, where I was paid a kingly $10 per hour for my work. And I shoved my way into the industry like that. And then I met Danny eventually, and he told me we make indie games now. I said, that's cool.
I declared it.
You declared it. What is it about? Like, okay, gaming is one thing. As gamers, we have this community that we've kind of built over the years. You know, it's a large one, and it's growing bigger. But within that community, you've also got the game developers. Is that a community of its own? Like often you hear of, you know, competing games, so on and so forth. But is there a community within the game developer area?
I think there definitely is. I mean, I'll be the first one to say I'm bad at PR, but apparently I'm good at just meeting friends. Like, yeah, everybody that, you know, I follow, or the lion's share that I follow on, you know, Twitter and talk with and so forth, they're all other devs, and it's partially trading ideas. You know, there's a handful of people that will bounce ideas, and even just like ways to structure our notes and things like that, simple, boring things off each other. But I mean, like, our Steam code to integrate leaderboards and achievements was, you know, gifted to us generously by Puppy Games, another, you know, indie game studio of just a few guys that make games, and, you know, tons of, you know, the code bits and things. Because when we dove into Puuba, we had never made like a standalone, like full-length game. We had both worked, at least on the development side, of like making smaller licensed games within existing frameworks and stuff. And so, yeah, the support network is huge. Being able to make our game, we wouldn't be able to make our game if there wasn't like a huge network of people to tap for questions and advice and forums to visit and things.
Dave, do you, when it comes to developing games, you know, like I've been a developer in the past, but I've developed, you know, applications for the desktop. I never got into the game, even though I wanted to at one point, but that was just way out of my league. But was there a process of discovery that you went through to finally figure out that, yeah, I really want to write or be involved with games to this degree?
I love that you directed the question to me, because I haven't actually pointed this out yet, but Danny does all the coding. Like, Danny is the programmer, and I don't know, I'm the rap shadow. I'm just there trying to make things better. But your question does kind of imply that, you know, I am a developer in whatever sense that
I... Hold on, I'm going to interrupt. You are a developer. Hold on. Tons of the game ideas and the design, like, yeah, sometimes I write 1 million pages, but it wouldn't be what it is if you and I didn't bounce off each other for, you know, 10 hours a day. Like,
yeah, no, I mean,
it's changed tremendously. It doesn't matter if you code.
I'm a game designer of sorts, but I'm more of an assistant capacity to you. I did like write about half the script and stuff like that. I mean, I contribute. I'm a developer, but I'm not a coder.
Oh, okay. Here's the question then to both of you, and you can answer as you wish. We often think of, when we're playing a game, of the coders, the developers. We don't think of it as being different talents within the group or the people involved that make up that game. Is there an importance to either side, or are both, like the game developer, the designer, the artist, the script writer, like the story writer, are they important all together, or is there kind of a hierarchy?
Well, I think I have a different answer as a consumer, like as a player of games, than I do as a developer of games.
Answer both ways then.
Sure. So as a player, I almost am blind to art. Like, I'm all about the gameplay, the control feel, the difficulty, the speed of play, just the mechanics. Like, I obsess, and that's how I design too. Like, the mechanics come first in my brain, and then I kind of back my way into, like, what world does this make sense in? So as a player, if everything was a red rectangle, I'd be just as happy. As a designer, that's totally wrong, because I'm not the only player in the world, and different people connect to different aspects of a game. What I love about a game, somebody else who loves the same game might hate and love a completely different aspect. And so, like, that's something I've learned over the last couple of years since we've been making our own games. It's really important to, like, step outside of myself and be willing to, like, look at all the aspects of the game. So in terms of a hierarchy, I would honestly say no. There's a great comic by this webcomic called The Meatly, themeatly.com, and it's got an artist and a designer or a developer arguing, like, well, we can't come up with the art. We don't know how the game plays yet. And the other guy's like, well, we can't come up with how it plays. We don't know what the characters look like. And I would have disagreed, but I have learned over the last year, like, that both sides are really valid. I don't think you can have one without the other.
What about you, Dave?
That comic that Danny's referencing actually echoes 80% of our conversations. I start with, I kind of feel like you can shoehorn any IP into, I don't know, or I should say, you can shoehorn an IP into just about any gameplay style, so the IP is more important to me. Like, I care about the characters, what they look like, and how they act, and, like, their motivations, their backstory, and stuff like that. And whenever I try to cram it into the game, Danny just looks at me like you're wasting everyone's time.
So our first game, Concursion, it's like a genre mashup-y platformer, and, like, for me, it was all about the gameplay, but Dave wrote, like, a Bible of the universe, and it came in really handy before we were said and done, but, like, every minor enemy had, like, a rich backstory, and we knew, we actually put, like, a timeline together, and we knew where every character was when any other character was doing something, where they had come from before and after the game, and yeah, Dave wrote, like, an entire kind of novel about it, really, that came in handy.
That's the one thing that I've sort of found over the years, is that with a lot of games, you might not think that there is a lore or a backstory to the characters, but as you play more and more of a game like let's say, for example, Mass Effect, or even like the Halo series, or any of your there is a very, very rich lore. When it comes to you, Dave, like, what is that creative process to come up with that lore?
I think it's kind of what I alluded to earlier, is that I've always wanted to be an artist, whatever that is or means, and regardless of whatever edge of the entertainment industry I bump into, I try to make it into, like, something that's really meaningful to me on, like, a personal or, like, soul level. Like, well, I'm not going to engage in this unless I really understand it, and I feel like other people won't love it unless I love it. So to love it, I have to understand it, and to understand it, I have to flesh it out.
Danny, when it comes to the code side of that, how do you interact with that? Like, how much does that lore or that backstory that has been created affect what you do?
Noise.
A surprising amount. Like, my first gut is, like, it doesn't, but that's entirely wrong. No, I mean, Concursion's a better example because we had this story woven into the whole game, but, like, it was really important to know, like, where the handmaiden was when the hero was in Act 4, because that would affect our ability to use her in a cutscene, and the availability of a cutscene would affect, how the level was structured, whether we built a stage into it, and, whether this was a quieter moment, an easier level, or whether it was, like, a big old crescendo action moment. And, like, we tried to structure, cutscenes into moments where they fit not just chronologically, but in terms of, like, I don't know, one thing that's really important to me is, like, the ebb and flow of tension and emotion in the player as you go from level to level. So, like, knowing where the characters were really affected where those peaks of difficulty even were, because we wanted to be able to fit in the right tonal moments. And so, I mean, the easier answer would be, like, of course it affects how every enemy looks and behaves, but, like, it also affected the macro kind of design of the game.
Dave, I gotta ask, because I'm looking at your avatar in the screen. Where the fuck do you come up with the idea for your character designs?
So actually, we we work with an art team, and there were different art teams for each of the two games that we worked on. With the Weaponographist art team, really fantastic guys, and we sat around and kind of thought up what people look like, and we wrote it all down, and gave them elaborate descriptions. And then they kind of came back to us with like a few mock-ups of wireframes and pencil sketches. Like, how about this? How about this? How about this? What you're looking at for Bartholomew was a rejected hero concept, and it stuck around for so long that when we decided, because originally, like Danny was saying, characters come and go when he's doing the coding. So at one point we had 3 vendors, then we had 5, then we had 4 in the town. Bard's one of the 5 vendors. So when there was a period of time where we did not have a journalist, and then we decided to add the journalist to the town, we needed a character design. So we harkened back to those early pencil sketches that one of the artists absolutely loved, and he fought for. He's like, you guys got to use this somewhere. You got to use it somewhere. And so, the art team actually kind of resurrected Bard from the hero graveyard and turned him into the glorious creature you see before you.
Yeah, our art process is weird. Like, I can't draw at all, and Dave, I don't think, is much better, but we write these tome descriptions of each character. Like, it's lion tamer, but he's a lion with a mane, but he's also dressed like a circus performer. Again, he's got the chair, and he's a lion tamer that tames lions. And then Mike Shanks, who is the character designer, just makes it come to life.
What led you to the both of you to creating? First off, where does Puuba come from?
The word Puuba means nothing. It's totally a gibberish word. It was like an inside joke with my friends in high school, and I've kind of just attached the word to anything I've done over the years. Like, it was a website with basically just dirty jokes. I don't know, not dirty jokes, but video game humor for years. And when it came time to name our company, it was the only word that made sense to me. It's just kind of encapsulated all the ridiculous things that I'd done that weren't proper jobs.
Okay, kind of before you started Puuba, what involvement did you have with the game industry? First, Danny, and then we'll go to Dave. But Danny, did you have any involvement with the game industry other than a consumer, or it was Puuba your introduction to?
Yeah, I guess my involvement with the game industry was kind of tangential. Both Dave and I met working at a place called Deluxe. It's a post-production house, so we were doing a lot of licensed small games on Blu-ray discs or for web or for mobile for Disney and Universal and Fox. So we made a whole bunch of games for Wall-E and a game for the Lorax and stuff like that. And that was really, really fun. The team was awesome, and I really liked working there. Super enjoyed it. It was just the ideas of stuff I wanted to make were getting weirder and crazier and larger, and totally correctly and justifiably, Disney should not invest in an idea like Concursion. It's bizarre and crazy, and there's nothing you can skin it with. It doesn't tie into anything. And so it was, I guess I was the fire starter, but it was kind of I really want to do this particular idea. I want to do it in an environment where we can have full creative say, where we can do any stupid idea we want to do. And, I think Dave was just about ready to start looking at New Horizons also, and I just kind of said, how would you like to work at my house?
Dave, was your progression to this point, was it involved directly with game development, design, or did you come at it from a totally different perspective?
Actually, my trajectory it's not really the same as Danny's, but it's crashed into his in the last 2 years. But when I kind of came out here, I just wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I didn't care if that was as a singer or a musician or a radio personality or any of the other things I've tried and failed to do. But I loved video games. I watched the movie Grandma's Boy. This is not a joke. And I said, holy shit, that's a job? That's a thing you can do? And so I applied to be a video game tester to try to break my way into the industry. I did not know that the place I was going to was the Square Enix building in LA. I just went to it because it was a Craigslist thing. I showed up and it was the Square Enix building. I was wow, okay, I need this. And I totally bombed the interview. And then I just kept harassing him, and I finally got the job. And like I said before, it was $10 an hour, which is not really enough to live on in LA. Danny's holding up signs, and that's kind of bullshit. but yeah, so if I'm going on a bit too long, I apologize.
No.
But so I moved from Square Enix to another smaller video game company called Real Time Associates, and they made educational games. And one of them was actually a prototype for a Bratz laptop, and the prototype did not have a keyboard face yet. It was only metal spikes that would electrocute me. So it was, I paid my dues, I'll say. But then I wound up working in the job with Danny previously, and I was hired for my video game testing, I guess, prowess. So it kind of led me to this career.
Cool. So your reason for starting Puuba was for just concursion, or was it other?
It was, I'd say maybe 50-50 concursion. Concursion was an idea I really liked, even though when we started Puuba, well, no, I guess for that first game, I was pretty sure like that's what I wanted to make, and it went through some evolution, but that was the gist of it. The other half of it was just like, despite I genuinely really did like where I was working, I just really wanted to try to start up something where, you know, I could be both technical and sort of creative lead and just tinker and do something dumb and reckless. And so that was a really big part of it. It was like the right time. Like all of the tech at our previous place was like settled and vetted and starting to get a little bit more rote. And I, enjoy creating and tinkering and making something new. And so it just seemed like if I was going to look for something fun, new to do, I would really regret it if I didn't, Operation Big Stupid Gamble and work from home. So part of it was just, I don't know, a kind of undirected drive to do something creative.
Okay, I've got to ask both of you this. What was that feeling when you first decided to start Puuba, and when you actually began that first day?
Dave, you want to do?
Yeah, so I remember this. We went to, Danny asked me to hang out after work. He was my boss for a while, and then we were working in different departments, and we kind of spread apart in the company, but we stayed friends. And he's like, you should, let's go out for a drink tonight. I said, okay. And we went to go see the first Hobbit movie. And I was really excited to see the Hobbit movie, so I wasn't thinking about anything else. And Danny just kind of drops this very casual bomb of like, I'm thinking about just starting up a indie video game company, and we'll just only make games. And how's that sound? I'm like, yeah, let's do that tomorrow. I want to do it right now. And he said, well, maybe in
like that.
maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years. I'm thinking, I was like, yeah, well, no, do it. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit tomorrow. So we should do it tomorrow. And I did really push him
That's
hard.
perfect. I'm quitting next week.
I pushed him really hard to do it because I was ready to move on.
Yeah.
But what was the first day like? I will throw that to Danny, but really quick, I just want to say it was awesome for me. We sat down and started making a bunch of charts and graphs that were, in my opinion, absolute busy work, just to prove that we were working at a job. But it was still incredibly fun and liberating.
I still make timelines. I like timelines. The first
Did we do
day,
a Gantt chart for the second game?
We
Danny?
did do a
No,
Gantt
we
chart
didn't.
for our first game. We never did that again. That was stupid. That was busy work. I had to learn how to manage a project.
Yeah, it's what we knew. We were coming from a deep corporate world.
Yeah.
And it seemed like we needed a chart.
We didn't need that. No one needs that. I don't know what Gantt stands for, but it doesn't mean anything. The first day, really, really fun. Like, I antagonize Dave a lot, and there's a lot of singing in the office because it bugs him. And a lot of, really intense discussions in the backyard, but also complete just pants-wetting terror, which it still is. Like, I really like Concursion, and I really like Weaponographist. I'm stoked to put it out in really just a handful of weeks. But I still have no idea how other people are going to receive it. Like, I enjoy the hell out of it, and I hope people will also do, but in terms of, like, holy crap, this is our job. This isn't a hobby right now. It's terrifying, but that's good, because terrifying keeps us working and keeps us doing what we're doing and keeps us constantly trying to improve what we're making. Like, we've been QC locked technically on Weaponographist for like 3 weeks, and I keep just rejecting small aspects of it and redoing them because I think they can be better.
Yeah, we're not QA locked anymore.
Yeah. Now, you keep mentioning Concursion. That was your first game that you did as Puuba Games?
Yes, indeed. Yep. Concursion came out, under a year ago, about 10 months ago.
Now, give us I don't have anything for it, but give us a brief rundown on what Concursion is.
Zany? No, Concursion is a mashup of 5 different video game genres into one kind of seamless, singular video game experience. So imagine like you're playing a Mario-like game, and there's bright blue skies and puffy white clouds, and your B button runs and your A button jumps, and you see like a literal fracture in the sky. And so on this side, it's the clouds and sky, and on the other side, it's like planets and stars in the distance. You can run and like jump over that divide, and the moment you cross the divide, you turn into a spaceship because now you're in a shoot 'em up. Your B button doesn't run anymore; it shoots lasers. Your A button doesn't do anything, and like it's all about like weird acrobatics that you can do when jumping from a platform to a Ninja Gaiden game to a jetpack exploration game to a shoot 'em up to like a Pac-Man Gauntlet maze game, and they're all just completely smashed together. The enemies shapeshift as they move from world to world, and their behaviors totally change. Your look and your buttons remap. It's really fun. It's tough. It's a hard game, but I really like it. It's very speedrunnery.
Is that on Steam?
It is, yeah. That's on Steam now, and I think it's actually on sale on the Humble store.
Can one of my mods grab a link for the Steam and the Humble for Concursion and throw it in chat so that people can check this out? Now,
Hey.
What I gotta add, like we have seen, like for the longest time, basically gaming was AAA. Okay,
Yes.
it was big budget games. It was FPS and now we got MOBA big name games. We've got MMO big World of Warcraft big. But over the past, I would say 3-4 years, we've seen an incredible rise in the indie game market. Like, this is probably, I wouldn't say it's the golden age of indie games, but I think we're rapidly approaching that era. What do you think led? Was there a specific game, or was there a specific set of circumstances that sort of helped pull the indie game to the consciousness of gamers?
I think it's the exact same thing that happened to the music industry. That's why I bailed out of it and jumped into this one. All of the technology that's available has made it possible for very, very small teams to do what billion-dollar studios used to be the only people who could do. And there's no gateway. Like, you don't have to go find your way into a giant corporation to do this stuff. You can just do it in your house. And so everyone's doing it.
I gotta say, I think it's a distribution model though too. I mean, like, Steam, obviously huge, is one of the first in field, making it possible to distribute games out of your bedroom. But like, to put it in a simpler sense, just, I don't know, broadband internet, like, the life cycle of a game right now is so much longer than it ever was. It used to be, AAAs only, because that's all you could possibly fit on a shelf, and only AAAs that were either gigantic or that came out in the last 2 months. And beyond that, you've got to go to a used bin, or you've got to go to a used game shop, because shelf space is a premium. But shelf space is literally infinite now, with Amazon and Steam and Humble and Desura and just a million others, Get Games. There's absolutely no reason to delist or reject a good game, and I think that's really different. Like, if a game is good, that doesn't mean it'll get its time in the spotlight, but it means it has a chance. It means that there's a way to put it into a player's hands. And I think, like, I don't know, as somebody who really wants to make more games, that's amazing. That's like, I don't have to just pass it around to friends, but I can actually share it with a ton of people. And then with all the social media in the world, what we're doing right now, we can chat about it, and we can engage about it, and we can take player feedback and roll a patch for free, and take people's cool ideas and put them into the game in real time. Like you said, 3 or 4 years ago, that's unheard of. And I don't know. Yeah, you say we're not in the golden age, and I agree, but I think we're getting there. I think the real-time feedback and the distribution, it's just crazy that, like,
a handful of jerks working at my place can make a game and actually get it into people's hands.
Do you I know that Kickstarter has been a big way for gamers, game developers to fund. Do you like that business model of using Kickstarter or Indiegogo or anything like that to? And I guess you could even say the Steam Greenlight to a varying degree as well as their early access. What of those business models? And I have to call them business models because really,
Sure.
that's how you to raise money as part of your business. One, what do you think of those business models? And two, what did you do to fund Puuba games for Concursion and also Weaponographist?
Well, for Concursion, Dave won't like me even sharing it, but we tried a Kickstarter. We did not succeed. I think we went too early. We didn't have a lot to show. Our art was not super far along. Neither was our development, and I don't think we knew how to sell ourselves, which I think we're still learning. I think we're good at rambling, but maybe not good at a cohesive market approach. I don't know. Kickstarter is different today though than it was a year and 2 and 3 years ago. Was there even Kickstarter 3 years ago? Geez. The trend now is really weird because, we did this too. I'll cop to it completely. People tend, I find, to ask for dramatically less than they actually need to do their project. And it's because I think of a fear of failing, which we had as well. And it's like, okay, our game is going to cost X, but geez, I don't know if, the world at large is going to want to give us that. Well, I hope we can get this much, and we'll have to find the rest and make it work. And I feel like that puts you in a really uncomfortable position as a developer. I've seen and talked to, I'm not naming names, but a couple people recently who've been in that boat where it's like, okay, we need this much, but we're new and we're unheard of, and I don't know how to do that, so we're going to ask for less. But now suddenly we have to do this. We owe people that much, and the stress level is, I think, dramatically amplified because you do. I think you feel like you owe people an amazing product, and you kind of do. And you might not have as much as you hope to have to make it. And so it's different now than what it was. But I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know. That's my personal reaction to it. As a consumer, I actually kickstart a lot of projects. Like Dave mentioned and I mentioned before, I really like weird games, and so I really like supporting them. But as a developer, admittedly a super tiny hope that anybody in the world has heard of us developer, which is still how I feel. There's a scary aspect to making promises before you've got too much done. And the flip side was when we considered kickstarting the Weaponographist was okay, well this time do we wait till we're almost done? And again, I only speak for us, but it felt kind of facetious. It was if we wait till we're almost done, Kickstarter is to fund a project so that you can do it. But we would have been asking for money after the fact, having had a project, and it just didn't feel honest. And I don't speak for anyone else. Most Kickstarter projects, even in that case, if you're running into the debt to make your game and hoping to get paid back, that's super legitimate. You gotta eat, and that's how we feel too. There's nothing wrong with that. Just for me, it felt like it would put us in a weird place creatively, and so instead we went just as the publisher route. So for Weaponographist, we ended up hunting for publishers, and Mastertronic was kind enough to show interest in us and pick us up. So I guess to answer your question in a straight way, without telling a giant story, Concursion was just from pocket. Concursion was terrifying and I guess funded by me. Weaponographist is co-funded by Mastertronic, who is our very generous and gracious publisher.
Dave, when it comes to the indie games, what do you think of we're seeing a lot of different art styles. Everything from clay games and their Don't Starve and Invisible Ink, through to things like Darkest Dungeon and such. What do you think, Dave, of this resurgence of an interesting art style to go with games?
I think that the art style of video games used to be, at their inception, it used to be dictated on technical possibilities. There only was pixel art because there only were pixels. But now that you can pretty much put any art that you want into a game, you're only limited by the creativity of your art team. And a lot of those, or yourself if you're the artist, and a lot of the art that we're seeing is because people want that exact image. Like they can choose. So if you see a game that's pixel art now, it's because somebody has very fond feelings for pixel art. That's their choice. It's not a limitation. So I don't know. We're only limited by whatever's in people's minds. And also, people are trying. I don't know. I met a guy. I met Super Chop Games down at South by Southwest, and they made a game called Ephemerid, which is a musical adventure game, and it was a really cool game. All the art in the game is made out of paper, like actual paper that they basically scanned in. So, we're only limited by our imaginations now because technology is allowing for any art style of anyone's choice.
Yeah, there's a No, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was just going to tack on to that. There was a shooter I played last week, and the name is escaping me. I have a name in mind, but I'm not sure it's right. It was a shooter where all of the art was, they built an actual model city, and they just filmed it from the top down and panned along it, and that was your
awesome.
vertical scroll for the shooter, and all of the enemies were all actually physically built models, and just amazing looking. In fact,
how has no one done that before? That's awesome. I'm immediately thinking that we could play in those like bigatures, the Weta bigatures from Lord of the Rings. Like,
Yeah.
that's such a cool
Okay,
idea.
I'm right. The Blue Flamingo, to cite its name. I wanted to make sure I was right.
What do you think of this recent move by Epic Games and of Epic and what's the other one, Unity, to sort of match Source, Valve's Source, and going with a free model rather than outright having to pay and then pay royalties, or a subscription and pay royalties? Right now, it's basically you can use it for free, and if you start selling, then you got to pay a 5% royalty. At least that's with Epic. Unity, I think, is free. What do you think of this? The effect on the gaming market with the game engines themselves, unless you're rolling your own, which you got to kind of wonder why when you got this kind of quality. So you are rolling your own engine for what? Okay,
Yeah.
I see. That's what I was curious about, because I like, my question was going to be, what do you think the effect of this free use of major game engines is having on the indie market?
I think we're dumb for not using them, frankly. I mean, the reason we're not using them, in our case, was simply that I wanted to dive in. Like I said, I was really excited to start on Concursion and, the idea, and I didn't want to brush up on anything. I just wanted to jump into a language I was comfy and already trained up in and begin. There was also a couple things in Concursion, like we have this multi-universal, multi-dimensional soundtrack where like every world has its own soundtrack and they all crossfade and blend together. And I wasn't sure that an existing engine could do that. And in retrospect, my research was probably underdone. They probably can, but I didn't know, and I don't know. But I think it's great, honestly, despite the fact that we're dumb and we don't use any kind of existing engine. It's awesome because, I mean, you might be an amazing game designer, but not, a hardcore tech nerd, or, you might be an amazing artist and not like a hardcore programmer. And there's nothing wrong with leveling the playing field in that sense. If you can be more democratic in that sense, get everybody in and get everybody designing, that's only a good thing. It's going to result in better games. And for a while, I was afraid that it might result in kind of more consistent games, but that's just not true. Like, just because somebody hands you the tools to do the fundamentals, like draw a graphic, play a sound, make music, have a window, like, that's things that's probably a good idea to just give everyone instead of reinventing the wheel. Beyond that, you can build in just amazing things on top of it. No two games necessarily look alike. So I think that's a big contributor to why, like, we can have as many awesome games right now as we do, and it's because we have so many. Somebody who might have a great idea but might not have the means to pursue it can pursue it. So I'm a fan.
Dave, where did the idea for Weaponographist? I'm going to get to this in a minute, but where did the idea for Weaponographist come from?
Mostly Danny. The idea for Weaponographist came from, we were trying to design a second game, and we batted back and forth probably 60 or 70 ideas, and we started settling on one that was Danny's concept of a frenetic, like, you cannot stop type of game experience where you had to keep going. You had to like swap bodies and stuff, and it kind of morphed into how do we make sense of it. And luckily, we wound up with I don't know, a pre or a post-industrial age kind of like spooky Black Forest type of theme, because that's the kind of stuff I like. I like, Grimm's fairy tales, but yeah, it could have been anything. It was Danny's impulse to make a game where you were not allowed to stop or slow down, and you had to swap constantly.
Okay, Danny, I gotta ask you, man,
Yeah.
because I have a hard time rolling this across my tongue. Where the hell did Weaponographist as a name come from, and why?
That is also my fault. We were, Dave and I, in the backyard bouncing names back and forth for a couple hours, throw in one name after another, and I kind of not entirely seriously. I love nonsense words, but I threw out not entirely seriously, the Weaponographist. And Dave kind of like asks me, dude, what does that even mean? Like, that's not a word. And I jokingly pull out of, my butt, Weaponographist. It's someone who draws weapons. Ha! He draws weapons. Yeah, it's the
I
Weaponographist.
see what you did there. Yeah,
It was accidental.
Well, like I often believe that some of the best stuff comes totally and utterly by accident. Now, how long has it been from that conception point, where the name is, where the idea is, to where you are now? How long has that time been?
We've been saying 8 months for the last 2 months, so probably 10 months.
Well, did we start development in August?
Yeah.
I can't do months in order. I was about to list them off, but I literally
Right.
can't. I'm not capable. I can't even think of what comes after August. September?
About 9 months. That's
9
the
months?
standard
Yeah.
gestation period for creating life.
Nicely done there, dude. I like that. Yes. All right. First off, what we're going to do before we get into the game itself is I've got actually 2 trailers here. We're lucky enough. We've got your original gameplay trailer 1, and you've kindly gave me the URL for your newest trailer for the game, which is going live today?
Live
Tomorrow,
tomorrow. This is
actually.
the world
Live-
premiere right now.
Okay, so what we'll do is we're just going to switch screens here, and we'll take the gameplay trailer 1 and let you guys have a look at the beginnings of Weaponographist.
Yay!
Okay, I have to ask, you can unmute yourself, Danny. I think is it Dan? When was that trailer actually put together?
Dave made this trailer maybe 2-3 months ago, Dave? Does that sound about right?
I think I made it on January 5th or so, or like around that period. It was after the holiday break. We just felt like we needed a trailer. We hadn't done a lot of promoting because we'd been primarily just building it. And we argued and talked about concepts for maybe like 4 hours, and then I just went home and had like a little brainstorm, and I came back in the next day and made that in probably like 2 hours, and wound up not changing it too much. Kept even some of the original joke text that we didn't think we were going to
I wanted to ask, who the hell came up with that joke text? Like, because that was pretty funny.
I wrote
That was all
actually.
Dave.
Yeah, I wrote all of it this time. Usually we co-write or Danny writes stuff and I edit it, but that all just fell out of my
Yeah.
head.
You wrote all the first pass quote unquote placeholder, and then it all made me laugh. So we didn't change anything.
All right, so here is the world premiere of the second trailer for the Weaponographist, and let's have a look, guys. Okay, we'll switch back to our other screen there. Who is Doug? Give us the backstory on Doug.
Doug McGrave is a world-famous, well-renowned demon hunter. At the top of his game, he's been on hundreds of adventures. He's got all of the legendary weapons you could possibly think of, and he's a complete unrepentant jerk. So basically, the game opens up with Doug kind of accidentally visiting the town of Hellside. He's passing through on his way to a more lucrative adventure when he's stopped by a witch who asks for his help. And so as a result of that, she asks for his help. Oh, I've heard of you. I'm so happy you're here. You're the greatest. Could you please save Hellside? And he goes, basically, I would love to. Here's my fee, which you can't possibly afford. They can't afford it, so he turns his back to leave, and like I said, is very, very deservedly cursed. Doug McGrave is pompous. He's the best, and he knows it, and he is not very well liked, except by Bartholomew, who is his biggest fan.
Dave, who was Doug modeled after?
Don't say me, don't say me, don't say me.
Visually, I feel like there was a great influence from Ren and Stimpy. That's just personally.
Oh man! Wait! Ren and Stimpy?
Well, not Ren and Stimpy the characters, but characters from Ren and Stimpy that were more human.
Dude, do you know how long it's been since I've heard anybody reference Ren and Stimpy in any fashion?
Right.
That is awesome!
I can't really confirm it though. Our artist Joseph Rintoul absolutely blew us away with his character designs. Basically, we had them. Mike Shanks did the designs for the NPC versions of these characters and every enemy in the game. But for the dialogue cutscenes, for the blown up, more highly stylized visuals, that was an artist called Joseph Rintoul. And when he showed us his concept of Doug, we lost it. I felt like it was a big Ren and Stimpy nod, but he never really confirmed it.
Not a confirmed nor denied.
But the visual style of Doug actually was all Danny. It was all his suggestions. So I don't know, Dan, if you want to field that where you came up with the idea for what Doug should be like.
I guess my one most specific reference would be the Penny Arcade character, Jim Darkmagic. But Brock Sampson's in there. Like Dave mentioned earlier, he alluded to kind of the evolution of ideas that led to the game, and for a while,
Zap Brannigan a bit.
Zap Brannigan for sure. But one of the earlier versions of the game, plot-wise, was that you weren't going to steal weapons from enemies, but you were going to possess their bodies and run around and, beat up an imp and then steal his body, and beat up a zombie and steal his body, and on to the next, to the next, to the next, and that was going to be how you adapt. But every time you died, you'd wake up in town as a ghost, and then as a ghost, you'd possess a new villager's body. It was a town full of villagers, and you'd possess someone and walk in, and you'd always start out as kind of a base-level human. But I realized as a side effect of that, you were basically marching a parade of villagers to their deaths. Possess the next guy, march them in. And at the end, it was going to be like all of these villagers, when you beat the game, that were just going to team up on you and like swarm you. And
holy shit, I forgot about that. We should make that. That's still good.
It's still a hilarious ending to me. They were all going to finally get revenge. So from that point of conception, like, he was always a total jerk in my mind. He was just an unrepentant ass of a man, and that stuck even beyond the possession bit.
I'm just curious. Was that sort of influenced by anybody IRL?
You mean, is there anybody we know that's specifically this kind of jerk?
That might have had just a little bit of an influence.
In my mind, it's based on Dave, but he might say it's based on me.
Well, you're a dick, but also I view him as being representative of, let's say, all stereotypical video game like heroes, and we're kind of saying that those heroes are anti-heroes in a sense.
Okay.
That they're kind of just pompous jerks.
There was for a while a voice in my head of a friend of mine, whom I won't call out, but will probably know he's being referred to.
Now, I do have to say, and you are probably going to get this a lot. The art style of the game, like the layout and the rooms, is very reminiscent of Binding of Isaac.
Sure, yeah, Binding of Isaac, Smash TV, original Zelda, definitely. It definitely stems out of that same top-down combat heritage, for sure.
What was your thought process of going with that style? Like, why did you go that route instead of, the typical dungeon crawler? You're going a much more, not cartoony, but very much more cartoony type look.
You mean like wider open, bigger spaces? That's
yeah.
We actually originally had a lot of sketches where like rooms were bigger and there was a mini map and there was a lot of exploration to be done. But by and large, like, I really wanted this to be like white knuckle action the whole time, fast. Like, the nature of the game is to just highlight one point of it. You're cursed, and so whenever you're not killing enemies, you're getting constantly weaker. The way that represents in game is a combo meter. Every time you kill an enemy, you gain a little bit of combo, but that meter's always draining. It doesn't matter how much combo you have, as long as it's not empty. If your combo meter ever fully drains, you actually start to bleed experience that you've gained. And so it's really important gameplay-wise to stay constantly engaged, constantly battling, fighting for your level so that you can keep growing and not getting weaker. And when we had it written up with like bigger spaces, exploration, twists and turns and dead ends, all of that necessitates backtracking. You're inevitably going to make a wrong turn, explore somewhere for a treasure chest or something that isn't the way forward. And all of that backtracking, in my mind, was a giant impediment to the constant combat action. We originally had kind of filled that void with the idea that once you killed an enemy, it would come back to life as kind of a much weaker variant that you could just knock over to keep your combo going. But it felt really tacked on to me. And so in the end, it's not, I would say the Weaponographist is not really a dungeon crawler, except in the aesthetic. It's more of a beat-em-up. And those doors, the 4 doors on the top, bottom, left, and right, more represent like the blinking white pointer finger of a beat-em-up than they do kind of an opportunity to explore.
Dave, when it came to designing, because I know a lot of this came from outside, what was your influences or thought pattern when doing the design ideas for the layouts?
For me, it was color based. I wanted to Danny's earliest descriptions of what he wanted the dungeon arenas to actually be like, where it was more arcadey than we wound up with. But for me, when we were talking about it back then, it was like, well, I just wanted there's 5 depths of the dungeon. I wanted every depth to be visually distinguishable from every other depth. So I started with what color every wall should be, on the way down. This sounds actually kind of boring to say, oh, it's colors. But I wanted it to, I talked to Mike about at least starting with very specific color schemes. And also just kind of, I decided early on what each depth should be. Like I wanted a lush underground, and I wanted a castle underground for no reason and stuff like that. But the art team helped me through it.
When it comes to the mechanics of the game, Like I noticed from when I was doing some looking around, you both support WADs and you also support controllers.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is that process as a developer to be able to do? Is it a simple matter of key mapping, or is it much more into the code?
I guess the straightforward answer is if we had used a proper Unity or Source or something, it probably would have been a fair bit easier. But we are handling like the direct input from the controller directly. So I guess, do you want me to be nerdy? I can be a little bit nerdy for just a moment.
Go right ahead and be nerdy all you want.
So what we do is I treat our inputs as kind of two layers, and it makes life a lot easier. The gameplay considers all of the keys to be what I refer to as virtual keys. So there's not a Z button or a tilde button or an enter or a space. The game only respects buttons like attack up, attack down, attack right, attack left, run, pause, etc. Like gameplay-oriented keys, and I kind of refer to those as virtual keys. And then we've got a mapping of kind of many to one of physical buttons on a keyboard and buttons on a controller into those virtual keys. And so when I'm doing the code for gameplay, I don't consider the mechanical device that the player is using at all. I just say when they push attack up, attack up. Kind of in the deeper layers of the framework is that idea that I can take WASD and map them to move up, down, left, and right. And then also, redundantly, I can take a controller and map that to also up, down, left, and right. And if I want to, for some reason, also map the joystick to that, I can also do that. And it allows for all sorts of redundancy that, whatever player wants to do, they can do. The one creative, for the most part, that is straightforward and easy from a creative and a design perspective. The only problem we found was that while we have like WASD to move and the arrows to attack, and likewise on a controller we've got the D-pad to move and the buttons to attack, and that's kind of a straightforward corollary and makes sense. On a menu, the arrows shouldn't be selection, but their equivalency is the attack buttons. And so like, whereas it makes sense on a controller that, okay, A is attack down, and it should also be yes on a menu, it should be the select button, down on the keyboard shouldn't be yes on a menu. That's really weird.
Yeah.
So I did have to build kind of a secondary abstraction layer just for menus that said like, all right, now I do care what device you're on. If you're on a controller, the buttons actually do represent yes or no, whereas if you're on a keyboard, they're arrows, so they should navigate, and the enter button is used for yes or no. And so that was the one bit that actually took a lot of thinking, and we ended up having to like do these really interesting branches where like, okay, if you're on an Xbox controller, it does one thing. If you're on a keyboard, another, and if you're on a kind of a other or generic controller, it does an altogether third thing.
So is this coming out just specifically for PC, or are you looking at consoles as a possible market?
We're doing PC and Mac to start. I am a huge console gamer. I like Dave said, I play my PS4 a lot, though like he also said, I've been playing a lot more PC lately. I would love to port it. Right now, the programming team is just me, and it is kind of an in-house framework, so we decided to focus on getting it out on one place first and getting it out into the world. But as soon as we're settled and actually QC locked, definitely going to be looking at ports.
Dave, when it comes to the game mechanics, how much does that influence the art style, the look of the game?
A fair bit, actually, because Doug has to be able to wield 30-ish weapons. We actually wound up detaching his upper body from his legs, and his arms are frequently detached from his upper body. So there were a lot of technical, I won't say restrictions, but technical needs to designing Doug in particular. All of his animation sequences tend to be just like a floating arm that we have to attach to him. So the design style for Doug was in some part dictated by his mechanics.
Well, I'd go beyond that too, though, because like the way we came at it from the front was like, I came up with a list of a bunch of different weapons. Like, okay, I want one that works like a boomerang, and one that's very quick but short range, one that's very strong and long range, one that's very slow but slows you down but very strong. And like all these different heuristics for like a lot of weapons that work fundamentally differently, so there'd be kind of genuine gameplay variety. But based on that, some of them I attached. It's important that not just Doug have weapons, but every weapon has kind of a one-to-one relationship with the enemy that drops the weapon. And so from that, some of them I attached obvious connections to, like, okay, the 3-hit combo at a short range, that's a sword. it's dropped by a headless swordsman, and that one kind of came easy. But a lot of them, I was like, okay, Dave, here's a list of how the weapon works. Who might use this? And like an example would be, we came up with together, okay, the boomerang, shaped like a horn. Okay, let's have a satyr take off and like throw his horn like a boomerang. And so the gameplay fed into the art in a really direct way as it came up down to deciding the enemies, and then from that spinning further to decide what those enemies' behaviors would be using a different form of the same weapon.
Yeah, in fact, we did start with a big long spreadsheet first of what were all the weapon types going to be, like this many melee, this many ranged, this many which are denoted as specifically magic, and then those turned into like those all those different attack types turned into unique weapons, and then from there we decided what actually has weapons like that, and then we came up with this dungeon full of demons that really shouldn't even know each other.
You mean a 1920s gangster and a satyr shouldn't be friends?
Yeah.
Now I know Karida's been streaming this, and I know that there are other streamers also playing the game. What's been the reaction so far that you've heard, and like, how has that affected the game?
People really hate it, and I think we might cancel it, honestly. No, I'm kidding. I never said that on video. I never said that. People seem to enjoy it. People streaming have given really good feedback on like how they think a certain weapon handles. It's good to know even just the simplest, what's your favorite and least favorite weapon, which there seems to be no commonality between, which I really like. No two
Except
people
spear.
Seem to have the same.
Everybody loves the spear.
Like spear. Yeah, definitely stuff like, oh, this weapon's hard to see, or I think it's too weak compared to how hard it is to use, or it slows me down, things like that. Like, balance tweaks has been super based on people's feedback. I'll also say, like, we brought to conventions, and I had, like, a 2 pages long list of notes, like a couple bugs, but mostly just, like, even just watching someone play, whether you know it or not, Karita, when we're watching you, like, I'm taking notes, and, like, even if you don't make a comment, I can see, like, oh, the way somebody uses that weapon, they expect it to work differently than maybe it actually does, or they wish it worked differently than it does. And sometimes that, we should totally do and change it. Sometimes not, but maybe that means we should tutorialize it better or something else.
I'm kind of curious, what impact do you think, like Twitch and streaming has had on not just Weaponographist, but on game development for indie developers? I don't, screw the AAAs. But has it had an effect, and is it a good one?
I really like it. To me, I mean, like, I was on the old school Wild West internet, and it feels like the return of the chat room to me, which is to say, like, the return of the internet community. I feel like that had dropped away for a while, at least in a mainstream sense. Like, we've always still had, like, these sub-communities and, like, really hardcore focus communities, but I think it's awesome. Like, the fact that, to use our game just as an example, but, like, that I can go hang out in a room where someone's playing the Weaponographist and chat about that game in real time with, be it 5, 10, 50, or 100 people, that's awesome. That's the return of the arcade, in a sense. Combine that with online play and so forth, and like this community that, with like the dissolving of arcades kind of went away, is back in a really strong way. Like, fans can get together, talk about the game, and I guess I was just talking about, but what's new is impact the game. Interface with the developers directly and make change on the game. So I do that for games that I like, that are early access or that are upcoming all the time. I really enjoy it.
What about you, Dave? What's your thoughts on it?
I think that streamers existing in streaming games does impact the design of games, specifically and especially indie games, probably in subconscious ways as well. But we've all seen what people enjoy streaming. We've seen what people enjoy watching to be streamed. So that is seeping into the sort of collective unconscious of indie developers. Like, well, not just how do we make a great, challenging experience for a single player, alone in their home, but what are they going to want to show themselves achieving to other people? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it is, like Danny said, it's a return to the arcade ethos of, like, hey, everybody, look what I can do.
What you mentioned is really interesting. Like, indeed, even us, like, You requested, Dave, I not fully mentioned, but we're working on some possible after-launch free add-ons just because, like I said, we are kind of done, but we still really like developing on the game, so we're looking at adding new features. And the one we're looking at right now is kind of, in part, driven by streaming. Like, what would be fun to play for a longer period of time? And, like, a lot of streamers, will race and repeat and speedrun a game. That's part of it, too. What can we do to facilitate that or just make it 10% easier to do? Conversely, what can we do to make a game, fun to play for a longer period of time? And it's like where there's always been value to that. Like replayability is big and it's important. Putting a focus on that now can actually lead to to be businessy, to increase sales, because if a game's super replayable, somebody's going to choose to share it with their friends more often, which streaming allows us to do.
As we know, chat rooms are not always nice. We have our fair share of idiots, as we see here. How do you deal with the negative comments about the game?
We've been incredibly lucky so far that
Cool.
there have not been negative comments, but we actually, I personally find trolls hilarious. Like, they are sometimes harmful and sometimes horrible, but in the non-extreme cases, I'm up for a little random chaos. I can take it if somebody wants to, make fun, especially if I'm not showing my actual face. If they want to make fun of my my avatar face, that's cool with me.
We've never gotten bad feedback. Certainly, we've gotten bad feedback. Like one of our early preview articles about Concursion. The article is really nice, but I'd say a meaningful percent of the comments, because comment section is scary. Was not nice. I won't pretend that we've never
I'm sorry. I was talking about Weaponographist. Weaponographist is
sure.
incredibly positive. We have not had anybody. No, but if you want to talk about Concursion, yeah, we got trolled really hard on Concursion. We got trolled by Rock Paper Shotgun. We got trolled by the comment section on Kotaku, which actually, Danny took really personally at first, and I tried to teach him to let it roll off, but yeah, no, at first it was rough, but we're used to it now.
Yeah, at first it was kind of daunting, because I'll get all emo-y about it, but it's like, dude, I spent a year and Concursion a year and a half making this. I appreciate
look how powerful I am.
I didn't make it. I didn't pee in your cereal. If you don't like it, move on. That's cool. I even appreciate you don't like it, but don't be mean to me.
But that's their power. They get to destroy.
Go on.
They get to show up and destroy your great mood that took you a year to build, and they do it in 1 second. It's very powerful.
Yeah,
it is. It's like negative feedback, totally. But if too many people are doing it in a non-constructive or just overtly mean way, I definitely did at first kind of well, this sucks. Why'd we bother making something we love if I wasn't even hoping everyone would I knew Concursion would be niche and weird. The nature of it is niche and weird, but I didn't think we'd break huge with it, but I didn't want to be called an a-hole for it.
Well, I know when we were talking about Concursion, I saw in chat there were quite a few people that were on the Steam page or wherever, and they were liking what they saw. So, hey, you may get a resurgence in Concurrent.
Sure. We don't use real words.
Yeah, I don't either. But see, I can claim age.
Yeah. I just don't.
What are your plans for Weaponographist? Obviously the launch is coming up April 29th, correct?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Once that happens, and I'll be really honest, because I'm gonna be I'll grab you on Skype just for a personal conversation, because I want to get your reaction to it.
Sure.
But do you have a roadmap of or even thoughts of where you want to go with Weaponographist from this point forward?
How about I spill my guts and be too candid, even though Dave won't like it? Dave is more business-minded than me. I like to just be oversharing. Porting is huge for me. That's a big priority for me, just because I would love, from maybe just even an ego standpoint, just have a game on console is so cool. But also just to get more players in. Beyond that, we are looking at just, not paid DLC, just patching in additional content. we did the same with Concursion for a little while. I don't like to stop developing. Like, the coding part is really fun for me. So when we're done, I just want to keep doing it. So we have an idea for a possible kind of ongoing mode, and then I won't share the specifics because they're really in flux, but toying with, and this is super, super, like, let's call it a 1% chance of happening, just so that nobody calls me a liar later, but a possible multiplayer mode that would be a really interesting kind of non-symmetrical, where two players actually have very different ability sets and have to work together, that I think might work really interestingly. So that's just a little hint, but
well, I'm just out of curiosity. The journalist, is he basically right now? He's an NPC, right?
he is, yes.
But at some point, could he become a playable character?
You are reading our minds a little bit, but we're going to keep it close to the vest, regardless of what Danny said.
I will say, if he were to have a buddy, then the journalist certainly makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's be, and I know that when it comes to things, you always hope for the best. But what is your honest hope for the Weaponographist post-launch?
I'm hoping that it blows up into very big communities of people speedrunning it and really competing hard. Like, the infrastructure is all there. We have leaderboards. Like, I really want to see people try to beat it as fast as possible, get all the way through hardcore mode and play it repeatedly and really enjoy it and share it with each other.
I would love to see, a dedicated community of people playing hardcore mode, speedrunning it. If I'm honest, I don't think we're going to be the next, Binding of Isaac, Super Meat Boy, Braid, Bastion. Like, I would love to, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be gigantic like that. I would love to do financially just well enough to make a third game. Would be perfect for me to be able to eat food and make a third game. I would love for people to just really enjoy playing the game and share it with each other. If we could get a community of people that just really enjoy it, that is success. I mean, obviously, if we can get 1 billion people enjoying it, that is greater success. But my goals are modest. My goals are be able to keep doing what we're doing because I like doing it, and hopefully the reason we can keep doing it is because people like what we're making.
Okay, stepping beyond Weaponographist, I still have a hard time rolling that one off the tongue. Did you guys do that on purpose, or come on,
We don't even call the game that to other people. We're making you call it that stupid name. Other people just call it The Adventure of Doug McGrave.
What's next for Puuba?
Hopefully it's a handful of months of supporting and adding cool new stuff to the Weaponographist and getting porting started, and then hopefully it's a brand new game. Starting to tinker with a handful of really rough ideas for what Game 3 might be. But in a perfect world, that's what it is, that we don't grow too much. We maybe keep working out of the house, where the dog annoys us all day, but she is a classy and beautiful lady, and just make more of what we're making. I'm curious, Dave, how your goal compares to mine. My goal is not to get bigger and be huge and be a billionaire. My goal is to sustain what we're doing.
Well, I think if you were trying to be a billionaire, this is not the correct business model. But my goals are similar to yours. I want this game to be a great success. And if I'm ever known for anything, it may as well be something as cool as Weaponographist. But I am actually looking forward. I actually can't see past April 29th. I said this last year about Concursion for June 6th. Usually I will look, really far into the future and try to plan my life and where it's going. I have no idea what happens after April 29th this year. But I'm hoping that it's one of those things where the game goes really well and smoothly, and there's not any launch problems, and then we take a week off and just write down a whole bunch of game ideas like we did last year, and then we bang them into each other until we come up with something cool.
I hope there's one really fatal, really obvious, easy to catch bug, because Dave will take that really personally.
Yeah, I will. I'll probably
Dave does our QC.
All right, let's wind this down with for both of you. Any last thoughts on the world of indie gaming and on Weaponographist and on just your life as a game developing company?
Life is dramatically more terrifying than it was a couple of years ago. It feels a little bit like it's constant seat of my pants. Is that a saying? I'm gonna make it a saying. Seat of my pants.
Yep.
But it's really fun. Like I said, if we can keep doing this for as long as we can, that is success right there. I mean, be able to just keep eating and living and making games would be fantastic. I'm stoked at where indie games is at right now. I mean, if only because the worst possible case right now is what? We can't make a third game, but we make a third game by teaming up with other like-minded people. That's still pretty awesome. So it's like the world is wide open right now for making crazy little games.
You, Dave?
My thoughts on the state of indie gaming at the moment, or my thoughts on
Both.
I don't know. I think this is a really cool world that we're just dipping our toes into, and hopefully this is our gateway into becoming relevant in it and being able to share, thoughts and experiences with other talented people doing what we're doing.
Cool. All right, like I said, we'll wind this down. We're wound down. We're done. All done. I want to thank Danny and Dave from Puuba Games for being here, for doing the interview. This has been awesome. I've had a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And I wish you guys. Now I got to be honest to both you. I will probably not play Weaponographist because it's not my style of game. But I admire you guys for the game you have created. I've watched enough in the last couple of days, and I've seen Karida, streaming it, and I like what I see. I think it is a good representative of the indie game style, and
sure.
I wish you all the success on it. I really do. But for now, folks, we're going to call this interview to a close. I want to thank everybody for being here. Tonight we will be back at 12 a.m. as always for Late Night with Cranky and Friends. So be here and have some fun. But for now, folks, this is Cranky Canuck. This is the interviews. That's Danny. That's Dave. This has been an interview with Puuba and their new game, Weaponographist. It is coming out on Steam on April 29th. So make sure to bookmark that as a date to get it. But in the meantime, everybody, remember the two most important words of all time. Game on.
I need your love, I need your time when everything